Hello, LinkedIn makers and movers. Today's guest is somebody I've nicknamed the Ted Lasso of LinkedIn because of his kindness, authenticity, and the genuine belief that anyone can build a meaningful presence on LinkedIn. About 18 months ago, when I was in-house making my first CEO partner, help get LinkedIn famous, I did an in-depth analysis of our post performance. Our guest and I had connected through Exit 5 and LinkedIn, so I reached out to see if he wanted to geek out on the engagement data with me. I couldn't find anyone else. Of course he said yes, and ever since I've been following his journey closely. We stayed in touch. That experience shaped my decision to go out on my own and help tech CEOs with their LinkedIn branding. My connection to our guest feels personal, but I also know that almost 45,000 others feel similarly connected to him through his content, and I can see it in the content every day. Today's guest is Liam Darmody, the founder of Liam's Brand Stand. Before we pass the mic to Liam, let's dig into his background a little bit. Liam started his career in operations, initially focused on sales ops. He spent 6 years at Living Social during the height of the Groupon era. He later expanded his skill set into customer and product operations, went into B2B tech space. In those roles, supported revenue generation, probably in the tens of millions of dollars. Operations roles are fundamentally about serving the business and deeply understanding people's needs. In my opinion, I think this experience contributes significantly to the empathy that Liam demonstrates daily on LinkedIn. Liam had begun consciously building his LinkedIn brand back in 2019 during a paternity leave, and he treated the platform like a journal, sharing his hot takes, whatever it may be, daily. His consistent presence over the years has led to tens of millions of impressions, hundreds of thousands of engagements. And in 2021, thanks to that personal brand investment he made on LinkedIn, he was able to pivot his career to branding and marketing. And he was recruited as Director of Employer Branding and Talent Marketing at a B2B tech company, Willow Tree. That same year, he was one of 100 participants in LinkedIn's first Creator Accelerator. 2 years later, when Willow Tree was acquired, it became a natural next step for LinkedIn to leverage his personal branding success and launch his own LinkedIn branding consultancy, Liam's Brand Stand. That was back in August of 2023. He hasn't looked back. But Liam's greatest achievement, it isn't metrics, it's the thousands of people he's helped through his generosity and expertise, most of which is shared freely on LinkedIn. And with that in mind, let's give a big LinkedIn famous welcome to Liam Darmody. Welcome to the LinkedIn Famous Podcast, the show where we get real about what it takes to build a personal brand on LinkedIn that gets real business results. We're talking about driving revenue from a personal LinkedIn profile by sharing real and authentic stories and points of view. I am Brad Zomick, your host and the founder of Spectrumer, a personal brand consultancy that helps founders and executives get LinkedIn famous. Join me for unfiltered conversations from the trenches of LinkedIn. We'll meet CEOs, go-to-market executives, subject matter experts, and company employees with blockbuster LinkedIn results. We'll unpack strategy and leave you with tactical advice to grow your personal brand and demand for your company's products and services. All right, LinkedIn hustlers, it's time to level up.
Dude, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I think that's the best introduction I've ever had, Brad. I'm serious.
All right, you clip that and you play it next time you go on stage somewhere.
Go for it. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited, and congrats on all of the success you're having with your new endeavor and this podcast, this series. I think it's such a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I'm having fun, and I would thank you. I learned a lot from you over the years, and I would say you're a role model in the space. So I'm excited to have you here and to geek out together on LinkedIn again. Is there anything in your background that you maybe wanted to double click on?
You mean my physical background or my?
No, it's a background that I just covered. What you've been up to in your life as it pertains to your work and LinkedIn or anything for that matter.
No, I think you covered almost all of it. I think, the biggest thing for me that I think my story highlights is that you never know who's watching you, and you never know what opportunities you might be able to find, even without looking for them. If you just show up and you be yourself and you share the things that you know and you treat people well, good things happen. And I think, my example of my career pivot is a perfect example of that. And, now I'm pursuing my passion as my livelihood, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what's cool about this day and age is that career pivots, they could be made pretty quickly. I think it's probably 18 months, and you can kind of go from whatever it is you're doing to, I guess, the 80-20 of doing something like pretty well. And then you can spend the years after kind of achieving mastery. So I think that's great that you demonstrated that. And so I like to ask everybody who comes on the show, tell us something about yourself that the audience couldn't learn from your LinkedIn profile.
Ooh, that's a good question. I have most of my stuff on my LinkedIn profile. I suppose it would be that I have 3 citizenships. I have 3 passports. I'm kind of like James Bond. I'm not in good, cool. I'm not in as good shape, but yeah, I have Canadian citizenship, American, and Italian, which most people don't know. My grandfather, when the European Union was formed, Italy basically like opened the floodgates for 3rd generation Italians, I think, to get citizenship because they wanted to get more votes in the system. And my grandfather went through all the bureaucracy and red tape to get me a citizenship. And I haven't used it since, but I have it. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, it's pretty cool. Now all you need to do is get one of those dollar villas that they sell. You know, that you see them on the news. Buy a villa in Italy for $1.
Yep, the Tuscan fortress. Yeah, that's on my list of things to buy.
All right, cool. What is something that people assume about you based on LinkedIn that isn't true?
Ooh. I think people assume that I'm naturally a marketer and a salesperson, and I'm not. I very much have kind of a go-to-market mind. I love strategy behind marketing. I love the strategy behind sales, but it's not sort of the first thing that came to my mind, and it's not the most intuitive action for me. I spent most of my career at the bottom of the funnel, right? Sales operations, you're forecasting, you're reporting and doing analytics, you're measuring performance, and then you're doing it all over again next month and next quarter and all that. Whereas top of the funnel is a very different motion. And I think that is something I'm still working on myself. Fortunately, I have a passion for this platform where you can put content out there and sort of get inbound interest through social selling strategies. But that would probably be the thing. I think most people are like, we would never guess that you actually struggle with self-promotion or you struggle with asking people to check out your business and things like that. But it's always been something that's been hard for me. So I'm actively working on it all the time.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on some of that as well. Being a marketer and then trying to sell is like just as hard. So I've definitely been through and going through some of that. I can empathize with that. And when you started investing in your LinkedIn presence, what was going on in your mind that you decided to kind of just start speaking freely about whatever it is you're thinking about day to day?
So I've been on the platform since August 2005. Like most people, I treated it like the utility that, I think everybody does. Let's just store our existing network on LinkedIn and keep in touch with them and hear about their new jobs and use the platform every 4 years or whenever to find something new. But I wasn't actively spending time on the platform. I didn't really view it as a community. I didn't view it as a creation space until about 2015. And that's when I started to create some articles because back then that was really all you had. And I remember I was going through some pretty rocky times at Living Social, right? I was there for 6 years and that was like year 5 or 6. And so we had gone through explosive growth and then it was on sort of the downward. And I was writing articles about it because it was cathartic for me to write articles about the experience that I was having on LinkedIn, the experience that I was having in my job. And I remember I think I wrote these articles after one too many beers one night, and I published them and woke up the next morning thinking I got to take that down. But I actually had a bunch of messages in my inbox from people that I worked with who were like, that is the most incredible thing I've ever seen on LinkedIn. Like, what gave you the guts to put that out there? And so I left them out there. And that was when I first started to gap into the fact that there was something unique about LinkedIn because people were paying attention, but they weren't willing to talk about it publicly, right? They weren't liking my content or adding comments to it, but they messaged me and told me it resonated. So I didn't really do anything with that information until about 2019 when I revisited it. And I was spending a lot of time on the platform just consuming content. There were people creating content more and more, and I found myself here a lot. And so I decided that while I was on paternity leave in November, December timeframe of 2019, I was going to start creating content myself. So that's when I started creating. I started building relationships and connection. I wasn't here for business development purposes. I wasn't here to make money. I was just here for the community vibes, which is funny because so many people still don't realize there are community vibes on LinkedIn. But I loved it. And so I wrote an article in February of 2020 that said why LinkedIn is the place to be in 2020. And a lot of the things I said then are still true today, and even more so. And that was the beginning of it all. I just started spending time here intentionally and frequently and having conversations with people who are now friends.
That's really interesting. I think what's worth noting, well, two things actually. I forgot to call this out in the intro. You're the first person to wear a LinkedIn famous hat on the podcast, right? Every guest gets a hat. I probably should do a post with a few people wearing them. But thank you for wearing that today. This is the first. But
thank you for sending it to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, you deserve it. Wear it proudly. So it's worth noting that you were onto the wave before. So there was a big wave of people that came on during the pandemic because people had nothing to do during the pandemic. They're like, I'm going to come on LinkedIn. So I think your timing was impeccable, right?
Yeah.
That you had started investing beforehand. Now, I'm kind of curious when you go back to that early stage when you were, I guess they call it a nascent creator. What were some of the challenges you faced? When you think about the concepts of deciding what to write or engaging or even any sort of trying to grow, or was that even on your mind?
So it was actually, I think some of the lessons that I learned that in that first or second year when I was building have been pretty important for me because it's how I suggest people treat the platform now. And so when I started, I was like, anybody who has a bunch of followers on LinkedIn must be active. And I'm going to just start connecting with people who have big followings because they're showing up and they're creating content, presumably. But the truth of the matter is that there were plenty of people that had big followings that weren't really creating content because most people were not creating content. Most people still aren't creating content, right? It's still a small percentage of the membership. But I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I'm going to just connect with a bunch of people. If they're in tech and they are in operations and they have big followings, I'm going to just connect with them. That was a mistake, in my opinion, because if I look back now, I'm like, okay, I've got a ton of people in my contacts, but not all of them are active, and that doesn't work in your favor. So like organic growth, where like you're strategic about who you're connecting with and why you're connecting with them, and you want to make sure that they're active. That's really important. I think another struggle was obviously, do I have the right to be posting here? Am I expert enough? What am I talking about? Is it valid? Who cares what I have to say? All those typical things that for some reason a lot of people struggle with on LinkedIn. They're so nervous about what their boss is going to think or what their colleagues will think. They're worried that people are not going to like what they have to say or they're not going to react to it, which in many cases is true, right? LinkedIn is a lurker's paradise. We know that. But I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me at the time. I was a W-2 employee. So I was like, is my boss going to think I'm looking for a job because I'm spending time on the platform? Which is kind of wild. But I got over that, obviously. And a lot of my employers were actually, not only were they supportive of it, they wanted me to help other people figure out how to do it. And that's another reason that I sort of found myself thinking this is potentially some avenue I can explore someday, because their progressive-minded employers encourage people to build their personal brands. And that's only happening more and more now. So that was a hurdle that I was able to overcome, and then really kind of trying to understand how the place worked. And to this day, I'm still trying to figure out, how does this place work? They keep us on our toes. That's how they keep us coming back. But in 2020, 2021, impressions were wild, right? I had 6-figure impressions every single post. I had polls that were getting 5,000 votes because there was just such a dearth of content. There weren't enough people creating. So you had tons of traction. That was great. And then as you get more and more people, it starts to dwindle a little bit more. So it's been interesting to ride that roller coaster.
You make a really interesting point. There's 2 games, or it's not a game. I mean, people are just here having conversations, but just for the sake of making my point, there's a tactical game. And those things are kind of sometimes a little bit easier to figure out. Oh, you make a mistake, let's not do that again. This worked, we'll do more of it. But the head game is often the hard game, right? And you see that in professional sports too. How did you get over that head game? I guess the worry and the fear, and maybe take the stuff about worrying about your employer out, because obviously that encouraged you, but some of maybe the self-defeating beliefs. Was there any breakthrough
honestly,
there?
a lot of it had to do with the fact that people were starting to engage and people were starting to react to what I was putting out there. And I was having conversations with people. And that made me realize that it wasn't as my anxiety or my imposter syndrome, my insecurities were not reflective of what people were actually seeing of me. It was just me in my own head. And in the last 5 years, I would say that I am far less in my own head than I ever have been in my life because of LinkedIn and because of how self-confident I feel and because I've kind of decided that I'm going to embrace the ethos that if I put myself out there, I will attract the right people into my life and I will detract the folks that I maybe don't want to have in my life. And so I've sort of just given up on thinking that I can control it so much and just embraced being myself and doing good things for other people and having faith that good things will happen. And that's that. At some point, those feelings ended up crushing the insecurities, and that's when I really started to feel super comfortable here.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a little bit of a leap of faith required.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an unknown a bit. And I mean, the fact that LinkedIn has the entire world is on there for the most part, and they can see what you do and they can see who you work for, and they can, there's a difference between that and a pseudonym on Twitter or on Reddit or any other social platform where you have a smaller network because you're just inviting your close friends. Now you're all of a sudden putting yourself out into the world and being like, hey, whoever wants to see my content can now see my content. That definitely takes a leap of faith.
Yeah, it's a great point. As far as I've known you, I feel like your brand is pretty consistent, but was there an evolution from when you first started to now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I wasn't even thinking about my brand back in 2020. Like, I didn't really know what personal branding was at the time. I was really just here for community vibes and to share information about business and what I thought was interesting. I've certainly evolved since, right? I think understanding who I am and what I'm passionate about has been a very big unlock for me. I think parenthood is also, I mean, you and I have talked about that and how big of a role that plays in who you are and what you do. I have an 8 and a 5-year-old now, and I've learned a lot about myself in that time frame since having kids. I've learned a lot about just how to think through showing up and what matters to me. And that's something that I think you learn with time and seeing how people interact with you and seeing how people perceive you. I have a lot of conversations with people who are like, you're exactly who I expected you to be. That's what I want, right? Like that's, to me, the idea of meeting somebody offline or on a video chat and they're different than who they are online, to me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up. But that's one of the things that I appreciate the most. That's a really high compliment.
That actually, I would be disappointed if the online persona didn't meet the IRL persona. So
Me too.
I think it's pretty cool that you are who you say you are, right? And just one other point that you made too. It's interesting how something changed over the last few years. I don't know if it's just me because I'm also a parent. We have kids very similar age. Yep. And all of a sudden, like talking about parenting is cool on LinkedIn. But maybe that's because we're all the people who are on LinkedIn. And at some point, you get to this age, there's your work life and your parent life, and there's nothing else. So it kind of
and
often...
they're intertwined, right? Like there's no parenting is the hardest job there is, and it's the only one that lasts your entire life. So why wouldn't you talk about it, right? Like that's, to me, that is a logical next step. I think if LinkedIn is becoming a personal branding platform, and you are supposed to talk about your knowledge as it relates to things that you're good at or things that you're passionate about. I mean, parenting is a fantastic topic to share your knowledge about. And some people might think, oh, well, that's not appropriate for LinkedIn. But I talk about my family when I'm in the office. When I was working at a company, I was in the office. I would talk to my team. I would talk to people about my kids' soccer practice on the weekend. Like, it's part of who you are. And I think especially post-pandemic, I think most companies and people in business are a little bit more open to the fact that professionals are parents, and that's a pretty big job.
Yeah, I think parenting at work had a crash course during the pandemic. It was like the norm to have kids run in the Zoom meeting and even sit on the lap of somebody, and I think that's a good thing. So I like that.
Totally agree.
Parenting is on LinkedIn, and it's here to stay.
Me too. Totally with it.
You put out a lot of content, and I wonder. Well, no, well, there's a few things we can get into, but a little bit about your content strategy and how it's evolved, how you kind of maintain the output. Because I think I would probably put you in a bucket of fairly high frequency poster. I remember when we first chatted, we talked a little bit about post frequency, and most people are along the lines of we should post once a day. I think you kind of blast that out of the water. Anyways, yeah, what's your thoughts on content and the evolution of how you've approached it?
So I think everybody's strategy should be tailored to their own capabilities and their own comfort levels. And so I think when I was first starting out, 2 or 3 posts a week was kind of my go, right? And then as I got more comfortable, I would maybe put 1 out a week. And I think as more and more people, sorry, one out a day, yeah. And for the longest time, there's been people here saying, post at 8 o'clock in the morning, hang around for an hour for the golden hour, comment and respond to all the people who are commenting on your stuff, which I still think is a good strategy. But I think that if at a certain point I was kind of just like, I could wait and save this post that I have in my head till tomorrow morning or the Thursday morning or Friday morning, or I can just put it out now and see what happens. And I started doing that, and I started noticing that a lot of the negative implications that a lot of gurus talk about, which is you're cannibalizing the performance of your first post if you post before 18 hours for your second post and blah, blah, blah. I just stopped caring about that stuff. And I said, if LinkedIn really wants to be a user-generated platform that people spend time on all day, every day, they're not going to have success with it if everyone's showing up at 8 in the morning and that's the only time that they're posting. So why would they encourage that? And so I just threw all of the old habits out of the window and started basically treating LinkedIn like a journal that I would share with family, friends, and colleagues. That's kind of what I tell people to treat LinkedIn as, and not to worry so much about the performance of it. And when I did that, I started to realize, like, I can have a post that I put out at 4 in the afternoon get 5x the impressions and a bunch more engagement than the ones in the morning. I don't know why. I mean, for the life of me, I still haven't figured that piece out. But it was more so just about not worrying so much about the right time to post and the right way to do it and the right frequency. And because I think that was just, it was a self-perpetuating cycle of anxiety and friction that didn't really need to be. My suggestion to people that I talk to on a regular basis about how often should I post is as often as you can, but being able to consistently maintain it for 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Because I talk to a lot of people who are like, all right, I'm going to go in on LinkedIn, I'm going to do it every day. And they do it for 3 weeks, and then they're like spent, right? Like, I have no idea what to write next. And so that is where I think you have to know yourself, know the right balance for you. If 2 times a week is what you can handle, do that for as long as you can, and then spend the 3 days that you're not posting engaging with other people's content, following new people, connecting with new people. Because I think that is the other thing that people need to realize, is that LinkedIn is about more than just posting, right? It's about relationship building. And I think that is what makes LinkedIn very unique, because I don't really have that experience on other platforms, right? There's not really this emphasis on, well, who is having that conversation underneath the post? It's more so just get your 2 cents in and then move on to the next one. Whereas LinkedIn is, I keep seeing this person in a lot of the same comment threads. I keep seeing these people in the same, we kind of move around like packs of wolves or whatever. And we're all just kind of like, we see each other at the same events. It really does feel like a bit of a conference.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that analogy that you made, or the reference to kind of doing what's comfortable and building up. It's almost like going to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. You don't start bench pressing 350. Right. Maybe someone like me, I start with the bar, right? Yeah. And then I'll add 25 pounds on each side, or whatever, 10 pounds a week or something. It's probably take me 2 years before I'm bench pressing 350, but
I'm not there either.
Yeah, I'm actually, I just do cardio. I don't go to the gym, but maybe I should. Actually, having this conversation makes me thinking about working out. But I think it's
Brad, get swole.
It is a good point, because like you're right in that trying to go from 0 to 65 is kind of a recipe for disaster. You'll get tired and you'll be like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that anymore. That was too much. But it's like the treadmill effect, where you kind of start slow and you slowly build up the speed, and before you know it, you're going fast.
Yeah.
and it doesn't hurt, and it feels natural. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that matters is your network, right? And the size of your following also matters, right? I mean, I've been depositing money into this account for 5 years. And so I feel more comfortable sharing something that's just a random thought that doesn't have any, like professional bend or, is specifically focused on marketing my business. Like I'll just put a thought out there because I've built relationships with people who are excited to just hear something from me. And that I think matters, right? If you're just starting to build out your content creation strategy and starting to build out your following, it might be a little bit more intimidating and you might feel more pressure. But I would also argue that might be the best time to just kind of try and let yourself hang out, and just be yourself.
Try to break it.
Let people get to know you. Don't try and be too polished. Don't try and treat it too much like a dissertation. It's just you showing up, sharing your personality. I tell people, like, your resume is what you've done, where you've done it, when you've done it. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to complement that by providing context around who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do what you do. And if you marry those things together, you've got the perfect personal brand, right? Like that's the whole you. And if you show up on LinkedIn and you show the whole you, some people may like it, some people may not, but you'll always be honest and you'll always be upfront. And the people that do like it appreciate you for who you are. And that, I think, is a really massive win.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of curious. So sometimes you're putting out a couple of posts, 3 posts per day, maybe more. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you keep track of all these ideas spinning around? Do you have some sort of system?
None. I don't have a backlog. I don't have batch content creation. I have ADHD, and whenever I am inspired, I write. And if I'm inspired and I have a post that went out in the morning and maybe isn't like going through the roof, which right now most posts are building a much slower pace. I'm sure you've noticed this, but yeah. I think that creates more room for more experimentation and just letting that thought out. So yeah, I would say that is my downfall. My Achilles heel is that I do not have as structured of an approach to content creation as many people, because I do struggle with focusing and just kind of sitting down. Like if you asked me to sit down on a Sunday and knock out 5 posts for the week, I don't think I could do it. At least not of the caliber that I consider to be the post that I like. And that's, something I need to work on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go back and forth between doing a little batching, and I like to write every day. Yeah, but I go back and forth between batching and just doing it as the day turns, so to speak. Sometimes I'll batch. Sometimes I will just do whatever it is I'm thinking in the morning of.
Yep.
But I think what's more important is actually the idea capture. Because if you show up and you get into a groove where like, okay, I want to do something at a set schedule and you don't have anything, that's hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe my question is, if you have something, let's say you put out your idea earlier in the day, but your next idea comes to you, do you have it sit in a notepad or something like that until go time? Or as soon as it comes, you just like, boom, even if it's like an hour?
Usually, I do have a place that I just kind of store ideas, but I haven't pulled something out of that Notion that I have. Like I have a Notion board that I just throw ideas in, but I almost like forget that I put them there. And so
okay. And do you ever go back and grab your greatest hit and like, I'm gonna trot this one out again? I'm
horrendous at repurposing. I don't know why. I have 4,300 posts.
That's a lot. Impressive.
I have a spreadsheet of all of my content that I exported from LinkedIn, so I could theoretically, recycle content for years if I wanted to. But I enjoy the writing process, and I like creating things that are new, and keeping things fresh, rightly or wrongly. It's just kind of my preference. And my experience is that if you try to fit your content creation process like round peg, square hole, or square peg, round hole kind of situation, like if you make it harder on yourself than you need to, you're not going to enjoy it, and that's going to make you less successful at it. So I think finding your own rhythm and finding your own groove is a very important thing when you're considering starting to spend more time on the platform, because it's already hard for most people to conceptualize putting themselves out there if you make it even harder by trying to create in a certain way that doesn't feel natural, I think that can make it a lot harder and make your chances of success a lot lower.
Let me ask you this. I think I see a theme emerging talking to different people, and obviously I have a lot of people who are really prolific in either the amount of content they put out or the followings that they have. Do you believe that the bigger creators operate at a different set of rules?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. There are like, there's collusion happening. There's no question about it in my mind. There are very big creators who have managed to get to a certain level, and that's awesome. Good for them. You know, like they struck well. The timing was right. They invested the time and resources. Did they do it 100% organically and authentically? I don't know. But it's definitely, you know, a very different time on LinkedIn now. I think, you know, and I think there's a lot of sort of backdoor collusion and deals happening where people are boosting each other's content and things like that. And that's just never been my style.
Right. Like, obviously there are those kind of maybe backdoor things happening, but let's say somebody's prolific like you and the amount of ideas that they have, and do you see people like attempting to do like the high velocity, almost treating it like it's Twitter and it working at an early stage?
I think that there's definitely something to that now, for sure. You know, I think I'm seeing a lot more text-only posts. I'm seeing a lot more sort of random 1 or 2 line posts. You know, like today I posted one that was just one single sentence, and it's doing very well. I think there's a bit of fatigue. I think, you know, LinkedIn, if you spent any time here, you know about broetry, and you know about, you know, dwell time, and you know about, you know, the gurus who say you want to make it so that people have to scroll and they have to read. And like, I'm at the point now where if your post is too long, I'm not reading it, right? Because I have too much crap in my feed competing for my attention, and I am probably not going to invest a ton of time in reading it unless I feel really strongly about who you are as a person and I want to support you or I want to hear what you have to say. So I think that puts a little bit more pressure on people to be succinct and, you know, also just be a little bit more casual with what they throw out there. I'm trying to do that more myself because I don't really spend time on Twitter or any other platforms in a meaningful way. So why not, you know? And I think like LinkedIn is unique in the sense that a lot of people feel like they have to hit there's like, I have to succeed here. I have to get so many impressions. I have to get so much engagement. And it's like, why? Why do you have to do that? Just put yourself out there. This is your professional reputation that you're building. Let people see who you are, and don't worry so much about, you know, how well it does. Just be yourself and put it out there. Not to suggest you shouldn't be strategic. You should definitely be strategic, but you should balance both.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One thing I think you called out, which is we haven't talked too much about on the show, the 2 styles of posting. There's the short form, the perfect post, if you will, where it's like the short, choppy sentences. The whole post is within
arrows,
one mobile
trees.
screen. Like you could see it all in the one screen. And then you have like the long form. I guess it's similar to like Adam Robinson, who packs it in. Maybe it goes to full post, maxed out at 3,000 characters, maybe spills them over into the comments. It's 2 schools of thought. And I don't know where I fall in there. I actually think at least if you're telling a good story, or if you're addressing a topic that's dense, which happens a lot in B2B where I live, the long form is a little more resonant. But I guess like, where do you fall on that?
I think it makes sense to do long form content if you feel like you can. I think the idea again is try not to force it. If you've got a topic that you can write about and you can provide compelling enough reason to keep reading, then by all means, go for it, right? I think I do like the idea of creating a post that fits your mobile screen. Like that to me is the best post, but I'm also pretty verbose, so I very rarely hit that. So I think, you know, that like even I posted last week about seeing more content that's just a 1 or 2 liner, and I intended to make that a 1 or 2 line post, and it ended up being like eight sentences, and people were calling me on it in the comments, right? And old habits die hard. I love writing. I like to share things in the posts, and 5 years of hanging around here makes me think that a 1-liner is not a post, right? Or a worthwhile
it's a
post.
tweet. It's a tweet.
It's a tweet, right? But things are changing, right? And a lot of people are moving over here from X, and so I think that's what we're starting to see a little bit more of. And I think there's 2 different types of content too, in the sense of like there's the stylistic piece, but there's also personal content versus professional content that you're creating that is intended to market your business and market your services. That should probably be a little bit longer because you want to make sure that you're delivering maximum value and that people are getting something out of it. Stuff that's more personal, I think you can be a little bit shorter with.
That is a great point. Shifting gears, what's your approach to engagement commenting?
I think it's probably the most important thing you can do on the platform, especially now that they're showing you impressions at the comment level. I think that's an indication that LinkedIn is trying. I think LinkedIn has probably gapped into the fact that there is not going to be this like massive influx of people posting content on LinkedIn anytime soon. I think they've been trying to push that narrative. They've been trying to get people to post more. Certainly people are starting to realize that LinkedIn is a great place to spend time from a community standpoint and from a content standpoint, from a learning standpoint. But I still think that the majority of people who are employed by a company are hesitant to post content, save for like the tech sales, the SaaS bros, like all that good stuff, like all the people that are at startup companies that are a little bit more focused on social experience. You're seeing slower growth on the posting front. So I think somebody at LinkedIn was probably like, what if we start showing impressions on comments and that becomes the gateway drug to posts? And so I think that makes a lot of sense. I, for a short period of time, had a new metric on my analytics on LinkedIn that showed me not just my profile views and search appearances, but also my total appearances on the platform. And it showed me percentage of my appearances that were from posts, percentages that were from comments, percentages that were from network recommendations, and then I can't remember what the fourth one was.
Yeah, I have that now.
You have that. Okay,
yeah,
you have it? I don't have it. They took it away from me, and I don't have it back yet.
But I don't have impressions on comments yet.
Okay, so yeah, that's how they slow roll, right?
Yeah.
But 42% of my appearances on the platform were from comments.
Yeah,
So
but even more for me because obviously I
Yeah.
don't have the same following as you. But that's impressive.
And I know people on LinkedIn who don't do any posting at all, and they're wildly successful. They just hang out in the comments, and then they live in the conversations. And so I think that commenting is essential. I think it's for people who are not really sure where to start with posting, commenting is the best way to jump in.
I agree with you there. And is your approach to commenting, you just set aside a certain amount of time and just scroll the feed, just surf?
No, so I have two different hats that I wear.
Yeah.
There's the regular LinkedIn hat where I'm just kind of going through and leaving comments on people's content. I'm using my notifications as basically like a bit of a mini feed. And then I have my own feed, and then I have people that I always want to just kind of show up and support and or consume their content. And then I have sort of more strategic engagement that is aimed at my ICP specifically. And I do that in Sales Navigator. So I create custom feeds in Sales Navigator for each of my individual ICPs, and then I spend a little bit of time every day commenting on their content with a little bit more emphasis on business development or strategic networking.
It's funny, we don't talk a lot about Sales Navigator here. Obviously, it's a big popular tool in selling.
Yep.
But I got to say, the UI for commenting is kind of a little janky.
Horrible.
Yeah, I personally love like the native feed. I wish they'd figure out a way to make Sales Navigator surface posts in the same way, because then you're like clicking through and then you have to open an extra box and
Yep. You got to click view and you got to comment, and then and if you try and do anything on mobile, the keyboard doesn't work very well.
I never tried. Sales Navigators on mobile.
Yeah, they have a mobile
okay.
app, but I just use text to voice or voice to text for that because the actual keyboard experience, somehow they've managed to make that difficult.
How do you split your? If you had to guess how you split your time across content and engaging? How does that break out? How much time you think you spend on LinkedIn?
So I would say LinkedIn is my predominant social platform, so I'm definitely spending. I could probably tell you too. I don't know if I want to look at this, but but yeah, I would say I'm probably on LinkedIn unless I'm on client calls from like 11 to 5 every day. And if I have client calls or I have client work, that takes precedent. But if I'm not, then I'm spending a lot of time in the comments. I'm, in Sales Navigator, commenting on people's content, following people, adding new people to my network, and trying to grow. So I'd say, maybe 30 hours a week. Let's see what my...
That's a pretty healthy amount of time. And how do you think it breaks out between writing content and commenting?
Probably 80-20. I think
80, okay.
commenting is where I spend most of my time. Yeah.
Okay, that's impressive. I've been trying to up my commenting game this year. I think last year I just used LinkedIn as a journal.
Yep.
And now that I'm trying to shift a little bit into selling mode, I'm like, I probably should have been commenting more. But I would say there's no cap. It's crazy because, like, obviously you only get 100 connections per week.
Yep.
So it's really hard to expand your network organically or aggressively. But yeah, and then like obviously content takes a long time, but commenting can be quick and effortless. But there's no cap on what you can do. So it's like kind of like the new frontier, really.
The other thing that's beautiful about commenting is that so often comments turn into posts for me, because I'll start writing something, and if I'm investing time in something and I'm passionate about it, I will write it, and then I'll be like, that'd be a good post. Like you've probably seen, I've literally posted screenshots of, you know how people post those screenshots of them tweeting? They look like the Twitter thing, but they're just like Taplio templates. I do the same thing, but with LinkedIn comments. And it works well. Like it's the same thing. It's just like me putting out a post, you know? And I just find that is also one of the benefits of commenting, because you're also getting social proof. You know, if you have 60 reactions to a comment that you leave on somebody's post, well, chances are that's going to resonate with your audience if you put it out there. So turn it into a post itself and see what happens.
Do you search out any specific types of posts? So you mentioned that you surf the feed, you have people bookmarked, and you have Sales Navigator lists. Or do any strategic sleuthing, obviously, to have conversations about LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I'll search for LinkedIn. I'll search for personal branding. I'll search sometimes for the term impressions, because if people are complaining about not getting enough impressions, like that might indicate that they're dissatisfied with the platform. But oftentimes the impressions is not, the dearth of impressions is not necessarily because of LinkedIn. It's because they're probably not doing something, and so it's like, okay, well, how do we turn that around? And there's usually something I can find that they're not doing that they should be doing.
Right. By the way, how are you on time? Do you have a hard stop?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm free.
All right. So shifting gears a little bit, we talked a little bit about the impact of LinkedIn on your career and I guess your life. Maybe we can dig in a little bit deeper there. Were there any surprising upside or downsides to becoming LinkedIn famous?
You got to trademark that term too. I think
I got to ask LinkedIn for it.
Yeah, good luck with that. The best thing that's happened to me is the boost in my own self-confidence and the feeling of just being comfortable with who I am and sort of not worrying so much about what other people think, which is interesting because a lot of people talk about social channels or social media and they say, the comments are so negative and, it's terrible for your self-esteem and things like that. But LinkedIn's experience is a little different because there's a self-policing mechanism that built into it. Nobody wants their boss or their colleagues or their clients to see them acting like a jackass. So you're not going to get as much vitriol or as much, hatred towards you if you do something that's just you being yourself. And I think that creates a little bit more of a safe space. So I've built a lot stronger self-confidence in who I am since spending time here. I think the downside is that at the same time, it can also make you feel wildly inadequate because you see all these different people who are here and you're in this echo chamber of people who are all promoting services and they all might be competitors of yours and you see them getting tons of engagement. You don't necessarily know how they got it and you're not able to replicate it and you have some ideas, like maybe they're not playing the same game as I am, right? But it still eats at you. And so there are certain people that I just have to unfollow and not have them in my feed because they make me think negatively about myself. And I like to think that's not a mindset I have. I want to think of an abundance mindset where, you can have a conversation with somebody that's in the same space as you who might even be competing for business with you, but you still have mutual respect with them. And those people I like, but there's a lot of people who are doing things their way and it's not the way that I would do it. And you can't help but kind of be like, why can't I get the same, And so it creates a little bit of competitive nature and a little bit of insecurity and frustration. So that I would say that's the thing. I was complaining to my wife yesterday because Mondays I don't let anybody book time on my calendar, so I have just the day to move into the week and start planning and stuff. And I was complaining about something, and she was like, you are in an echo chamber. Like, you are surrounded by people who are always posting on LinkedIn, and you are having conversations with all these other people who are always on LinkedIn. She's like, I don't know any of the things that you're talking about. They're not in my feed, And so the average person doesn't see the things that we see in the microcosm that is the LinkedIn creator universe, And I think that can sometimes mess with your head.
It's funny you mentioned that, and I think LinkedIn has probably made some tweaks to start showing you stuff similar to what you post, because ever since I started doing this professionally, more and more, last year maybe I saw, I feel like, 50 people who might be doing something similar, and it's similar to like Google Ads, right? In that Google Ads supports a range of people. You have people in India who are running Google Ads for a couple $100 a month, and you have agencies here in the U.S. who do it for millions a month, right? And but I think in the last year it seemed, or I don't know, in the last 6 months, it seems to have like exploded, and there's like all sorts of people, I guess, other people doing it. I don't know if it's like the crunch happening with AI or the tech market. It just seems to, the amount of people that seem to be trying to feast on the system seem to be a little bit more. I'm getting all these carousels of people I never heard of, like sharing LinkedIn tactics, and I'm like, okay.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of that, but I think the question is longevity, right? Are they here 6 months from now? Are they here a year from now? I've seen a lot of people that come in super hot and then they're gone because this place is frustrating. It can be frustrating in the long haul, right? Like, you have to be committed, you have to be dedicated, you have to have patience, you have to be consistent. And even then you might not necessarily get, the traction that you're seeing some other people getting. And so it can be a bit of a mental game to look the other way and just be like, no, I'm just going to stay the course, stay focused.
It's a good point. I think ultimately, I'd say the stamina to stick around probably makes a big difference. A lot of the people who are some of the biggest creators here are just kind of feasting on compound interest.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think the thing that bothers me about that is that there's still this element of, if you buy my course, you could do this too. But that ship has sailed, right? Like, nobody's ever going to be Justin Welsh. There's just no way. He literally cornered that market at the perfect time, and he blew up. And that's great. Good for him. He saw the opportunity and he did it, right? But like, there's not anybody that's going to be able to replicate that at this point in time. It's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, it's interesting. You follow all like the mega creators, like the global ones that are not just in the U.S., and they all have a course. They all have an ebook, a course, and a tool, an AI writer tool, like a copycat of Taplio. It's the seedy underbelly of LinkedIn. There might be multiple people I'm talking about. I've actually seen a couple of different people come out with AI writers in the last year, or I don't know. Actually, there's probably maybe a dozen like AI writers for LinkedIn now, or something, something crazy. Yep. So everyone and their brother and sister has one. Yeah, so that's really interesting on the impact. Obviously, you talk to a lot of people who are wanting to follow in your footsteps. What is the first thing you kind of tell them if they want to invest here? And it's obviously it's a very different game today.
Yeah, I mean, I say if you want to spend time on LinkedIn, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And to me, the right reasons are to show up, share what you know, build connection with other people, and really kind of pay it forward, right? Put some good out into the world and see what happens. I think people who are here just for money, people who are here just to like convert new business, and they just want to grow mega empires, like that's the wrong reason to be here. You want to do that, like go elsewhere, right? You can probably do that more effectively and faster on TikTok or Instagram than you can here. This place is more about very intentional, very focused, very diligent and consistent content creation and relationship building. And if you're not here for that, you will probably not really be that successful. Nor will you find it as rewarding, because you're going to start putting stuff out there and you're just not going to see the returns that you're expecting, because as much as you see all these big people who have built these massive networks and are always talking about how much money they're making, A, that could be a house of cards, but B, that's also just not realistic. There are way more people who are not doing that. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, if you're here for business development, you have to be ready to sell. You have to. Yeah. Again, those days of like just put out content and then all of a sudden you're going to have tons of leads flow into your business, like that's just not realistic either. And so you have to be continuously doing things that are getting people, you're getting on people's radar. They're seeing your content. You're in the DMs with them. You're commenting on their stuff, like really a focused approach. And that's why I think like I call myself a networking coach, because I think most people don't know how to network on LinkedIn. They just don't. And it is such an important and strategic thing to being successful on the platform.
I like that positioning. So I got a little bit of a lightning round of other LinkedIn related questions kind of to round the end of the episode. If you were running LinkedIn for a day, what's the first thing you would change?
I would blow up groups, and I would create a competitor to Mighty Networks, Circle, School, all those community platforms, because I think that me personally, I would love to host a community on LinkedIn where I could have a paid community. I could give LinkedIn a portion of that, and the dollar per person that pays me $20 or $30 a month, that would be fantastic for me, because I think that one of the reasons that I'm terrible at communities is that I just don't, there's only so much time you can spend in certain places, right? So if I'm in Circle and I'm in Mighty Networks and I'm in Heartbeat, like I can't keep up with it all. But if it's all on LinkedIn, that would be a really streamlined experience. So that would be the first thing that I would do, because otherwise I think Substack is going to start really cutting into their Substack, and those other platforms are basically taking opportunity from LinkedIn. I think the other thing I would do is give people the ability to see content from everybody in their network. Just give me the ability to filter so that I have a view of every post from every person in my network that I want. I think if LinkedIn was to say, oh, you have 45,000 followers, like, do you really want to see all their content? Maybe not, but that should be my decision. I should be able to do that. And then I guess the third would be some type of compensation for creator content. I don't envision LinkedIn doing that personally. I don't think they're going to go down that route ever, because they're a big part of Microsoft. But I think that would be really welcome by most people on the platform, and I think it would also encourage more people to start creating content here.
You clearly have thought about that question. That's like a lightning round question.
Just a short.
What's the LinkedIn trend that you wish would go away?
Oh man, AI comments are just garbage. I delete them when I see them, or I call them out. And to a certain extent, like AI posts too. I mean, I think it's just, I understand people wanting to use AI to help them write, but I think if you're just letting people write with AI and just post it, it just turns into drivel, and it's kind of defeats the whole purpose of the platform. So that, and then engagement pods. I mean, I think they're starting to figure out how to combat engagement pods a little bit, because you're seeing a lot of these influencers, their impressions, their engagement has not sustained itself over the last couple months relative to what it used to be. And so I think LinkedIn's getting a little bit wiser to it, but I think that engagement pods are responsible for creating that pressure that people feel. And I just wish it would go away. It's like everybody should be on the same wavelength and the same playing field, level the playing field. And if you have a level playing field, everyone will have the same experience. But you've got the other people over here that are cheating, and then you've got people over here who are not doing anything like that. And these people are frustrated because they're doing it the right way, but they're not getting what they want out of it. And that's problematic.
Yeah. There's some probably crackdown on all the tooling and whatnot. Maybe that's coming. They just blocked Apollo and is it Seamless, their LinkedIn pages.
Yep, Seamless.ai and Apollo. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's coming. Do you think LinkedIn in its current state is overrated or underrated?
Wildly underrated.
All right.
Underrated.
You heard it here. Liam says it's underrated. No, I think there's still not a lot of opportunity to build. I would say.
I think that LinkedIn 5 years from now will look very different than it does today. And I think that what they're trying to do, like if you go to their premium page for their premium plans, they have two plans, job seeker plan and small business plan, which to me is relatively new, right? It used to always be about job seekers. It used to always be about finding opportunity. LinkedIn is clearly realizing that there are way more people going into fractional and self-employed functions. How are they going to capitalize on that? So I think that you will start to see a lot more. Either it'll be a blend on one platform, but the user experience will be really different, or there'll be kind of like a more bifurcated approach where small business owners are over here and job seekers are over here. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think that if you look at the LinkedIn services section where you have ratings and reviews, right? as a job hunter, I don't need any of that stuff. That's what recommendations are for. So like the LinkedIn profile doesn't really make sense for both sets of users, both personas anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see that eventually evolve into something bigger and different than it is today.
All right, next one. Who are you following and learning from on LinkedIn right now? Or who do you think's crushing it? Maybe two different.
I think the thing that I love seeing is people who are relatively new to the platform or relatively new to creating content on the platform, and how much energy they have and how excited they are to be here. I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit of an old jaded dog. And so seeing people like that really raise my spirits. Let's see so Finn McKenty is somebody that I really enjoy. I like his style. I like his approach. He's technically a competitor of mine, but that's okay, right? Like same thing could be said for you, but you're a good dude and I like talking to you. And I feel like that is a benefit of the platform, is that you can build relationships with people who are doing the same thing as you and enjoy it. I think you mentioned Adam Robinson. Like I love his approach to LinkedIn. It's not necessarily like right in my wheelhouse, but I definitely love his approach to it. I think that, off the top of my head, I can't think of like new folks. Plus, if I start saying some people, I won't say other people and I'll get in trouble. I'll send you a list.
All good, all good. Well, it's been a pleasure jamming with you. Before we conclude, is there anything going on at Liam's Brandstand that you want to share with the audience?
Thank you for having me, first and foremost. I appreciate it. Thanks for the hat. I really appreciate that. And I'm doing what I love. I'm very passionate about it. I love helping people find their voice and feel comfortable sharing it and find new people on the platform. So I've got group coaching, which I just launched the LinkedIn cohort in January and February. That's been going really great. I really love that. It's a fantastic way to teach people and learn from people at the same time without breaking the bank. And then I've got my one-to-one coaching as well. And Sales Navigator, you mentioned. We don't talk a lot about Sales Navigator, but that's something I'm very, very familiar with and very good at. So if anybody's looking to get insights into how to use that the right way, I'm your guy.
All right.
Or one of the guys.
One of them. There's plenty to go around. I want to thank you for being generous with your time and insights. Everybody go follow Liam on LinkedIn if you haven't already. He's always sharing a really authentic and just insightful takes on LinkedIn and personal branding every day of the week. And sometimes even different stuff like parenthood and hot takes on hot sauce, which he's very adventurous with the hot sauce. I'm kind of scared of some of the stuff he's drinking or dousing his salads with.
Literally.
But it's been a pleasure. And until next time, let's stay connected.
Likewise, Brad. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I just love what you're doing. Keep it up.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow Brad and Spectimer on LinkedIn for hot takes and tactical executive branding advice. For the readers in the audience, subscribe to LinkedIn Famous on Substack. And if you really love this episode, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting platform of your choice. Until next time, stay bold, authentic, and keep on creating.